On this day, 24 years ago, September 11th, nearly 3,000 people died in those terrorist attacks on both the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City, at the Pentagon as well, where hijackers crashed planes into those buildings, and then a fourth plane crashing into a field in Pennsylvania. Today, we have an honor to have two men who responded that day to the situation at the Pentagon. At this time, let me go ahead and welcome in. We have Captain Scott Prentice and Jim Ingledew, who are part of the Virginia Beach Fire Department, but Virginia's Task Force 2 as well. Both of you responded that day 24 years ago. And it is an honor to both have you in the room to hear from your experiences, and even in the conversation we had beforehand. Again, thank you for your dedication and your service. And so, starting with this question from either one of you, tell me about that first moment where it hit you what had happened, and then the moment you realized you were going to be responding.
Well, I was working at the time, working part-time at the Paul Hospital in the ER, and it was back here. It was pretty busy that morning, and they had a TV out in the waiting room, and somebody come in and said a plane flew into the World Trade Center. Like, I'm thinking a whole lot about it. A little plane, maybe, whatever. It wasn't until a little while later, seeing it was a regular-sized jetliner that went into the building. And then there was a lot of chaos going around. And then when the second one hit, said, "This is real world now. Something's going on." And it didn't take long until our phones started ringing, and it was the guys at our station, because we all worked at the one station at Company 10 in Virginia Beach, where the FEMA team was based out of. It's like it's time for you guys, everybody, to come back to work right now.
Yeah, for me, as you know, firefighters work 24-hour shifts. So I had just gotten off that morning at 8 o'clock and had just gotten home, and one of the firefighters that I worked with at the station was coming over. We were actually doing some remodeling in my house and had just torn a wall out, as luck would have it. And so I was pretty busy already and didn't realize anything was happening. He came and said, "Hey, turn your TV on. A plane has flown into the World Trade Center." So I did, and we turned the TV on just in time to see the second one hit live, if you will. And Scott said very shortly after that, our leadership was calling saying, "You need to return to the station." At the time, the Urban Search and Rescue Team was based out of the fire station where Scott and I were currently assigned. So we were one of the first to be recalled back to make preparations to. We didn't know, obviously, at that time we didn't know if we would go to New York or go to D.C., but it was just come back so we can get ready.
So you get there, and at this point, obviously what's going on. How did you process that moment and being there on the scene and seeing what you saw? I mean, I'm sure you're trained, you have a certain amount of training, but at a certain point, does it kind of get even bigger than the training where you're trying to take it in as a human being? Like, what was that moment like when you got there?
Yeah, absolutely, Eugene. I told somebody not too long ago, in the fire service, you see a lot of things that the normal public doesn't see, and we do a lot of things that people don't have to be exposed to. But I always tell the story. We actually didn't arrive to the Pentagon until the 12th. As we left Virginia Beach, they just said, "Get on 95 and head north." And the programs was trying to figure out what team's gonna go where. And we actually spent the night in D.C. at a naval base, and then we're told the next day that we were going to the Pentagon and not all the way to New York. But to your question, I remember being on the bus and coming around the corner of the Pentagon and being able to see it out the window, and and even as much as you're exposed to in the fire department, even we're overwhelmed at times too. And I remember seeing that site thinking, it looks like a movie set or something. Like it, you have to convince yourself that this is real. You know, I mean, this has really happened, and what you're looking at is not a movie set. It's not pretend. It's not made up. It's you know what's going on.
Was it similar for you?
Oh yeah. I was driving one of the trucks into there, and they were rushing us in because the president was getting ready to come. So we pulled the trucks right in there on the Pentagon property, and we all got out, and the guys on the buses and stuff were coming out, and we just all just kind of just stood there for a while and just looked at it. I mean, it was just so unreal looking, and just the enormity of it was huge. Then we got work to do.
So tell me about that work. I mean, when you're approaching a situation like this, something that we had never seen before. I mean, I remember I was young. I was in the 7th grade, I believe, at that time, old enough to understand what was going on. My mother came and got me out of class. I was in lit class. We did not have televisions in our classrooms. We didn't have cell phones on us at the time. We weren't at that stage of cell phones. Right. And so all I knew was my mother was coming to get me, and she briefed me while we were in the car. I think it was maybe my first period. Also, it was, as you know, very early in the day. I don't think I had another class. And we get to my best friend's home, and as a just family unit, we watch the coverage. And I remember even then thinking, this is something I couldn't even imagine taking place and trying to wrap my brain around it. You all are trained for any circumstance, but this was something you had never seen before. So what was the first thing that you actually did when you got on the scene in terms of actual responding?
We went in, we got there in the early afternoon, and they went in there and they wanted us to do what we called basically a hasty search through part of the unburnt parts of the building and through some of the burnt parts that were there to see if you could locate anybody. And it was awesome. It wasn't awesome. It was so unreal because, like we were talking, we went through before, and you find a cup of coffee sitting there with a half-eaten donut, or going around where people just left, and where there was parts of the building that was completely untouched and other parts that were just completely burned out and stuff. And then after we come back out, and basically what our mission was, and it stayed for the rest of the time, is we're not letting any more of this building fall down. So we're here to shore up this building and, bring some closure to some families, because we was hoping to find some live people, but there wasn't much chance of us going to find them.
And you were telling me, Jim, that you found some interesting items at some point being on the scene as well that kind of took you aback.
Yeah, like Scott said, the mission was to shore up the building so that no more of the building came down. And then to do that, we had to dig through and clear out debris to be able to get to the columns and such that are in the building. And clearing stuff out, I came across a driver's license. And our orders were, if we came across any personal effects, obviously not pieces of the building, but anything that we would think that could have some sort of value. There was an FBI agent that was sort of assigned to us, not necessarily right next to us, but in close proximity. Whatever you found, take it over and turn it into the FBI. And I remember picking up this driver's license and looking at it, and honestly, it was pristine. It wasn't damaged or anything. And I saw the woman's picture, on her driver's license, and her name. I've never forgotten that name, Suzanne Calley, with a California address. And it just, as the kids say now, it hit different, and I held on to it for maybe 30 minutes or so, just thinking about, I wonder who she was, what she was doing, what she was like, and so, obviously I ended up turning it over to the FBI, and some years later, when you and I were talking, going back to the memorial in New York, I remember going and finding her name on the memorial, because they have all the names of all the passengers of the aircraft as well as the firefighters and all, and it was something I've just never forgotten that her name on that driver's license.
We were talking beforehand about how we now have adults who are living who were not alive at the time of 9/11, or they may have been really, really young, and so they don't really have any recollection or really concept of what took place. And in my opinion, it's also about what happened afterwards. I think about the unity and how the country rallied after that. So many things we know have changed. I mean, if you went on a airplane, went to the airport pre or post 9/11, there's a big difference. But that was one thing that really stuck out to me, even at a young age, was there was that period of time, and I'll let you guys speak to it as well. Did you feel that, do you sometimes sense that those who weren't alive at that point don't understand how connected the country was in those months after what took place?
Yeah, I have to believe so. So I have two daughters. One was born before 9/11, and the other one was not yet born. And even so, my oldest daughter was very young, not quite 3. But, she has some memories that, only a 3-year-old would have. For instance, we were coming into downtown Norfolk. This is after a couple months after, towards Christmas, when Norfolk, lights up all the buildings. And, I was telling her, wow, look how pretty the buildings are with all the lights, because it's cool, for a 3-year-old, they get a big kick out of it. And she said to me, I'll never forget, she'll say, yeah, and maybe a plane won't even fly into them. And so that's, the aftermath, how innocent the 3-year-old was. But back to your question, something I do remember that was very striking afterwards was the number of U.S. flags. People had them on their cars, they had them in their places of business, they had them flying at their houses. I don't think you could buy a U.S. flag probably a week or so after the 9/11 attacks, because everybody wanted that, pride and being, USA strong.
And then for you, I have to remember to keep putting on my mic here, Captain Scott. For you, was it similar at that time?
Yeah, I didn't see hardly any footage. I didn't see anything after I left the hospital. I left the hospital when the second plane hit, after the second plane hit, and I didn't see anything. We went to the station, we were loading our stuff up and everything, and then we ended up going to our training center, and then we started on the road. And it wasn't until after we were at the Pentagon a couple of days, I went and asked our task force leader, Chief Cobra. I said, we were NASCAR fans. I said, who's on the pole for the race on Sunday? He goes, there is no race on Sunday. And I said, there was. He goes, no. And he looked around. He goes, you guys don't realize this. He goes, there's no NASCAR, there's no football, there's no baseball, there's nothing going on. Only thing is going on is the world is watching, wanting to know what you guys are doing here and how many towers we built that night and daytime. And he said, the world has just completely changed. And that was really hit me right then. That's when he had to sit down and they went and got footage, because there was a whole bunch of us that didn't really see anything until about 4 days later. And we were sitting at one of the sites.
Because it was also a different time, I think. It's interesting you talk about how, there were so many of us who, and I say so many of us. Again, I was young, but old enough to understand what was going on. But we're talking about a time where social media didn't exist, right? And if you're getting information, you're still getting it in that moment. It was broadcast television. A lot of people seeing those images happening as they go along. I remember it was one of the first times in my life that something just kept being replayed over and over and over again. But we didn't have the opportunity and ability at that time to just, oh, let me look at my phone and see what was happening. It was very much so, I remember even in my classroom, because I wasn't the first kid to get taken out, you're kind of thinking something is happening.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But if you don't have that conversation with someone and they don't know what's happening, it was just such a different time.
Yeah.
So after that takes place, how long were you all there serving at the site and helping people in hopeful rescue, but then later recovery? How long were you there?
We were there 9 days, I believe. We were gone a total of 11 days, but we were at the Pentagon for 9 days.
Okay. And the day that you all are returning,
That was a different one.
can you talk about it?
It kind of got me a lot when we were coming back. I was driving one of the tractor trailers, and when we were coming down 95, almost every bridge had a fire truck, and the guys on there waving at us
With a flag.
with a flag. All the way down 95, all the way down 64.
Yeah.
And at the time, our trucks weren't marked. We just had plain old trucks and some rented trucks. I don't know how they knew it was us or whatever.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, how do they know it's us?
Yeah, I mean, our trucks, they had no markings on them at all, not like they are today. And it really got.
And then, of course, we leave and return from the fire training center in Virginia Beach, and just returning to that crowd, and then seeing our families, our wives, my daughter. It was 24 years later, it's still a little emotional. It was life changing for everybody, but I think even us in the fire service or urban search and rescue world, it's altering, and I think we work hard on controlling it. We're all pretty good at boxing things up, but it's still on the shelf. The box might not be open, the lid's not off the box, but it's still on the shelf. So coming home was, and everybody wants to call you a hero, and we never consider ourselves hero. We don't think of ourselves, not even in the same room as a hero. Heroes are people that aren't trained to do it and aren't tasked with doing it, and they step up and do things without being required, so to speak. We're doing our job, and we're happy to do it.
I will say respectfully, Captain Ingledew, you are a hero. And I appreciate your humility in that. And also for you, Captain Prentice, both of you, you answered a call without question, without knowing what you were walking into fully. And you went there with the goal of saving people and helping people at whatever risk that could have been to your own safety and well-being. And that, I believe, and I think anybody who is watching and listening to this right now would agree, makes you both heroes.
Well, Eugene, what I like to tell people, it's a really good feeling. People see us, in the grocery store, on calls or out in the public, and they always say, hey, thank you for what you do. And I'll tell you, like I tell every one of them, you're worth it.
I want to say to both of you, if I can get you guys both up, there we go. Thank you again for the sacrifice that you made, the risk that you took 24 years ago today. Thank you for your continued dedication, because here you are still ready with a group like Virginia Task Force 2 that to this day still goes out to countless disasters, to countless scenes, and you all and your team do phenomenal work in saving lives and keeping people safe. So thank you for what you're doing even now. And I thank you for coming on and sharing your stories as well. And may we never forget, you know, do you worry about that? Do either of you ever worry about that we're getting to that stage where, again, there's that generation that wasn't alive at that time, wasn't born or was young, and we're not talking about it maybe as much as it was, particularly when I see certain things and conversations happening on in the country. Obviously we think about what took place just yesterday. Do you ever worry that maybe we're getting to a point where we're forgetting?
Eugene, we've got, you know, people like you and your industry and the media. You know, we need to thank you for helping, you know, with the never forget, you know. So not that we as a country need a constant reminder, but, you know, once in a while maybe people need to go, hey, don't forget that this happened. So, you know, never forget is really important to me personally, and I think most of the men and women in my field of work. And so thank you too for having us here and, you know, helping people to never forget.
You know, I appreciate that, and it is a part of our role. You know, I tell people, you all do the work and we get to tell about it. And so as long as we have that opportunity and then find people like you who can come in and are willing to share the stories, of course, we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure this generation and the next generation doesn't forget.